Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going exploring some recent developments in cybersecurity that have sent ripples through the industry.
Yeah, it's been a pretty eventful week, that's for sure. Lots of activity, some expected, some not so much.
Right. And the connections between some of these stories are, well, unsettling, to say the least.
Exactly. So shall we start with the Palo Alto network situation?
Let's do it. They issued an advisory about a potential vulnerability, right?
Yep, a potential remote code execution vulnerability, and it's in their PanOS management interface, no less.
Okay, for our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly does remote code execution mean? What's the risk here?
In simple terms, it means an attacker could execute code, malicious code, on a vulnerable system, all from a remote location.
So they could take control, basically?
Essentially, yes. They could gain control of the system without ever physically being there.
That's scary.
Yeah.
And I understand they haven't disclosed the specifics of this particular vulnerability yet.
Not yet, no. But they are urging users to take steps to, well, basically lock down their management interface.
So what are some of the steps they're recommending?
A bunch of things, actually. It's a multi-layered approach. First off, limiting access to trusted internal IPs.
Makes sense. Keep it internal, keep it controlled.
Right. And definitely don't expose the management interface to the internet.
Oh, for sure not.
What else? Isolating it on a dedicated VLAN is another one.
Okay.
And using jump servers for access. Again, adding layers of security.
Creating barriers.
Exactly. And then there's restricting inbound IP addresses, only allowing secured communications like SSH and HTTPS.
Got it. So controlled access and secure communication protocols.
You got it. Now, this whole thing is even more significant because just yesterday, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added a separate vulnerability to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog.
Wait, a separate vulnerability also in Palo Alto network?
Yes, in their expedition tool. And it's a critical one. They're calling it CVE 2024-5970.
Okay, but why is CISA involved? What makes this particular vulnerability so serious?
Well, for one thing, it allows for admin account takeover, full admin privileges.
Oh, wow. So an attacker could potentially access sensitive data.
Yes, and gain control over the entire system, potentially. CISA isn't messing around. They're urging organizations to patch this vulnerability by November 28th, 2024.
So two vulnerabilities, two different Palo Alto Networks products, and one of them is already being actively exploited. This is a big deal.
Absolutely. This should be a wake-up call for anyone using these tools. Now, shifting gears a bit, Roman Sterlingov, the founder of Bitcoin Fog, got sentenced this week.
Bitcoin Fog. Wasn't that a cryptocurrency mixer? I remember hearing about it in connection with the dark web.
Yeah, it was a big player, operated for a decade, processed a huge amount of Bitcoin, over 1.2 million.
Wow. And how much is that in, real money?
Well, at the time of the transactions, it was about $400 million.
Okay, so not exactly small potatoes, but what exactly is a cryptocurrency mixer, and why is it associated with illegal activities?
It's designed to obfuscate the source of Bitcoin transactions, make it hard to trace the flow of funds, and that makes it attractive for, well, people who want to hide their activities.
So criminals, basically.
Often, yes. The majority of the cryptocurrency processed by Bitcoin Fog came from darknet marketplaces, and a lot of it was linked to illegal stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
We're talking narcotics, computer crimes, identity theft, even child sexual abuse material.
That's awful.
Yeah.
But this sentencing, it shows that law enforcement is getting better at cracking down on this kind of activity.
Right. Even in the world of cryptocurrency, you can't always hide.
Good. Okay, so we've got vulnerabilities, we've got a cryptocurrency takedown. What's next?
Malware. Specifically, the Androx malware. It's back, and it's targeting a wider range of vulnerabilities now.
Didn't we talk about this a while back? I feel like this malware is constantly evolving.
You're right, it is. And now it's even more concerning because it's deploying the Motzi botnet malware.
Okay, Mosi, another familiar name. Is everything connected in this world?
It seems that way. Mosey targets IoT devices, creates a whole network of compromised devices, a botnet.
So like a zombie army of IoT devices, all controlled remotely. Scary stuff.
Exactly. This integration with Androx means it could spread even faster and potentially launch much larger DDoS attacks.
Okay, remind me what a DDoS attack is again.
It stands for Distributed Denial of Service. Basically, it overwhelms a website or online service with traffic from multiple sources, makes it unavailable to legitimate users.
Right, I remember now. So we've got Androx already nasty on its own, now teaming up with Mosey.
A recipe for disaster, for sure. And it shows how malware is evolving. It's not just individual threats anymore. It's about how they combine and create even bigger problems.
Androx-cased alone is bad enough. It uses all sorts of tactics to gain access and then just digs in.
Yeah, exploiting unpatched vulnerabilities, using remote code execution, stealing credentials. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And it often goes after critical infrastructure.
Not good. And Mosey, what does it do again? Just create this botnet.
Right. It builds up this botnet, mostly of IoT devices, and then uses it to launch these DDoS attacks. They tried to dismantle it before, but now with this Androx-Cox integration.
It's like a hydra. Cut off one head, two more grow back.
Exactly. It's a constant arms race.
So I've got vulnerabilities being exploited, a major cryptocurrency player taken down, and malware that's becoming more sophisticated and interconnected. This is a lot to take in.
It is. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly shifting, and the bad guys are definitely stepping up their game.
So what about those nation-state actors? Are they still up to their usual tricks?
Oh, absolutely. India is being targeted right now. Two different APT groups, actually, Transparent Tribe and ISPNE.
Okay, I know AP stands for Advanced Persistent Threat, but can you break that down a bit more? What does it mean in practical terms?
Think of them as highly skilled and well-resourced groups, often state-sponsored, that conduct targeted attacks over long periods. They're not just looking for quick wins. They're in it for the long haul.
Espionage, basically.
Often, yes. And what's even more concerning is that both of these groups are using cloud services for command and control communications.
What does that mean? Why is that a problem?
It makes detection a lot harder. Traditional security measures aren't always effective in cloud environments.
So it's like they're hiding in plain sight.
In a way, yes. Now, Transparent Tribe has been around for a while. They've been using this malware called a laser rat and a new one called a polystealer.
What are they after?
They seem to be focused on Indian government sectors and Linux machines.
Okay, so potentially disrupting government operations. What about ISPNE? They're new, right?
Relatively new, yes. They're also targeting government agencies, but also academic institutions and political organizations.
Yeah.
And not just in India,
Very well.
Mauritius and Vietnam.
So a wider scope, different targets, but both engaged in espionage, most likely.
Exactly. And this whole cloud thing, it just shows how much the threat landscape is changing. It's not just about securing your own network anymore. You have to secure your cloud infrastructure, too.
And speaking of new targets, apparently Roblox is now on the radar.
Yeah, threat actors are targeting Roblox developers and users with malicious JavaScript libraries.
Roblox, the gaming platform. Seriously.
Yep. They disguise these libraries as legitimate packages. They know developers trust certain names.
So they trick them into downloading something malicious, like a Trojan horse.
Exactly. And then they deliver all sorts of nasty malware like Scald and Blank Grabber.
What do those do?
They steal information, login credentials, financial data, personal files, you name it.
So if a user downloads one of these infected packages, they're basically handing over all their information.
Pretty much. And then the attackers exfiltrate the data using things like Discord webhook or Telegram.
So they're using legitimate platforms and tools to carry out their attacks.
Right. Makes it harder to detect. And to make things even trickier, they're often retrieving the malware binaries from GitHub repositories.
GitHub, the code repository.
Yep. They control those repositories so it looks legitimate. It's like a digital shell game.
This is pretty disturbing. Roblox has a huge user base, and a lot of them are kids.
That's the scary part. It shows that no one is immune to these threats. Everyone needs to be vigilant.
Okay, let's go back to that Palo Alto Networks vulnerability that we discussed earlier. CVE 2024-590. CISA added it to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, right?
Right, and that's not something they do lightly. It means attackers are actively using this vulnerability to compromise systems. This is a real and present danger.
So patching is critical.
Absolutely. CISA is strongly recommending that organizations patch it by November 28th. No excuses.
Okay, so we need to keep an eye on that. Anything else we should be watching out for?
Well, the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, just instructed their employees to limit cell phone use for work.
Why? What's going on?
Concerns about a Chinese government-backed hacking group called Salt Typhoon.
Salt Typhoon. Sounds like a force of nature.
They're reportedly behind breaches at major U.S. telecom companies, Verizon, AT&T, Lumen Technologies.
No way. They breached those companies. That's huge.
It is, and they're potentially accessing communications of government officials and political figures.
So espionage. Right out in the open.
It seems that way, and the potential impact is huge. They're stealing call data, recording phone audio. It's a serious situation.
So from cryptocurrency to malware to nation-state espionage, it's been a wild week in cybersecurity.
It has. And it shows that the threats are constantly evolving and we need to be prepared for anything. It really underscores how vulnerable we are, especially when it comes to communications.
Yeah, I mean, we rely on these networks for everything. So is there anything we can do to protect ourselves from this kind of sophisticated espionage?
Well, for starters, being aware of the threat is crucial, understanding what's out there and how it can impact us. From there, it's about prioritizing security measures, strong encryption, multi-factor authentication, regular security audits.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Choosing telecom providers that are known for their strong security practices.
Good point. Do your research, basically.
Right. Speaking of international incidents, there's been a rise in prison sentences handed down to Nigerian cybercriminals here in the U.S.
Oh, really? That's interesting. It shows that cybercrime really is a global issue, I guess.
It is, and international law enforcement is definitely stepping up their game. We're seeing more collaboration, which is good.
Yeah, it's about time. Do you have any examples of these cases?
One that stands out involves Babatunde Francis Ayeni, a Nigerian national who was living in the UK.
Okay, so he was extradited to the U.S.
Exactly. He got a 10-year sentence for his role in a business email compromise scheme. They were targeting real estate transactions specifically.
Business email compromise, that's when they trick people into sending money to the wrong account, right?
That's the gist of it. But this operation was pretty sophisticated. They used phishing techniques to get email credentials of real estate agents and attorneys.
So people who are involved in high-value transactions.
Right. They'd compromise an account and then just wait for the right moment. When a big transaction was about to go down.
And then they'd swoop in and redirect the funds.
Yep. They'd send emails from the hacked account telling the buyer to wire funds to a different account, an account they controlled.
So the buyer thinks they're sending the money to the right place, but it ends up in the hands of the criminals. Sneaky.
Very. And the impact of this particular scheme was huge, over 400 victims across the U.S.
Wow. How much money did they manage to steal?
Almost $20 million.
That's insane. And I guess a lot of those victims probably never saw their money again.
Unfortunately, yes. More than half of them couldn't recover their funds. It's a reminder of how devastating these attacks can be, both financially and emotionally.
Yeah, it's not just about the money. It's about the trust that's broken.
Absolutely. And, this sentencing, it sends a message. Law enforcement is taking this seriously. You can't hide behind a computer screen and expect to get away with it.
Good. It's about time they started cracking down. Were there any other cases like this?
Yeah, just last week, another Nigerian national, Kuloda Akinwal Ojalad, got sentenced to 26 years.
26 years. That's a long time.
It is. He was also involved in a BEC scheme. His operation resulted in about $12 million in losses.
So they're not messing around. These sentences are significant.
Right. They're making an example out of these guys.
Good. Let's talk about the energy sector for a bit. There's been a lot of talk about cyber attacks targeting energy companies lately.
There has. Just last month, New Park Resources got hit with a ransomware attack.
New Park Resources, they're an energy company.
Yeah, they supply the oil field industry. They're based in Texas.
And ransomware, that's when they encrypt your data and hold it hostage until you pay up, right?
Right. It's becoming more and more common.
So how did this attack impact New Park Resources? Did they pay the ransom?
They haven't released a lot of details. They did say it disrupted their operations, limited access to some of their systems.
Okay, so a pretty significant disruption. What about the ransom?
They haven't said whether they paid or not, but they did say that their critical functions like manufacturing and field operations, those continued uninterrupted.
So they had some downtime procedures in place. That's good.
It is. It shows they were somewhat prepared.
So what about the financial impact? Did they say how much this attack cost them?
They said they don't believe it will have a material impact on their financial condition, so hopefully that's true.
It's a reminder that every company, every organization needs to be prepared for these kinds of attacks.
Absolutely. Even with all the focus on cybersecurity in the oil and gas industry, these attacks are still happening.
Speaking of oil and gas, what about Halliburton? Didn't they get hit with an attack recently?
They did. Back in August, they just revealed that it cost them about $35 million.
$35 million? That's a lot of money. What happened?
It was a data theft attack. They think it was the Ransom Hub group.
So they stole data and then demanded a ransom.
It seems that way. The attack caused disruptions in billing and collections. So even though they're a huge company, they still felt the impact.
It shows that no one is immune. Big or small, you're a target.
That's right. Cybersecurity is a business concern, not just an IT issue.
Okay, let's move on to retail. London Drugs, a Canadian retailer, got hit with a ransomware attack earlier this year.
That one was bad. They had to close all their stores for a whole week.
Wow, all 79 stores.
Yep. It really brought up this whole debate about cybersecurity in retail.
What kind of debate?
Well, some people say large retailers are more likely to be targeted because they have more interconnected systems and more data, but they also have more resources to invest in security.
Right, so it's a trade-off.
Exactly. Smaller retailers might be less attractive targets, but their defenses might be weaker.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is. But regardless of size, every retailer needs to prioritize cybersecurity.
What are some of the key things retailers should be doing?
Well, investing in modern security technologies is crucial. Educating employees about threats, having solid incident response plans.
So it's a multi-layered approach: technology, people, and processes.
Exactly. The London drugs attack, it was a wake-up call for the entire retail sector.
They're processing so many transactions, collecting so much data. It's a prime target.
And as retail becomes more reliant on technology, the attack surface just keeps expanding. They need to be extra vigilant.
Okay, so London Drugs, a Canadian company, got hit. But what about retailers here in the U.S.?
Well, Casio just notified users of a data breach. It was after a ransomware attack they had in October.
Oh, wow. Another one? Did they say how it happened?
Not really. They did say some of their servers failed. They haven't officially linked the data breach to the ransomware attack, but it's probably related.
So what kind of data was compromised?
Names, addresses, emails, that kind of stuff. But they said there's no evidence that passwords or payment details were affected.
That's good, at least. But still, a data breach is never a good thing.
Definitely not. Casio is advising users to keep an eye on their accounts, change passwords, and be wary of any suspicious emails or calls.
Good advice. Okay, so retail is definitely in the crosshairs. What about other industries? Any notable attacks there?
Nokia had a bit of a scare recently. A source code leak.
Nokia, the phone company.
Yeah, the telecom giant. A hacker called Intel Broker claims to have gotten the data from a third-party contractor that worked with Nokia.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't a direct attack on Nokia systems.
That's what Nokia initially said. They denied any compromise. But then Intel Broker, he wasn't happy with their response.
Well, what did he do?
He released the data publicly, put it up on a hacking forum.
Oh, that's not good. How did Nokia react?
They issued another statement saying the leak wasn't a big deal, that it was just some customized software used on a single customer network.
So they're trying to downplay it.
Yeah, but it still raises concerns about third-party contractors and their security practices.
It's like you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Right. You have to be careful who you trust with your data. And that brings us to a really important topic, the human element in cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. People are often the weakest link, right?
Unfortunately, yes. The Verizon Business Data Breach Investigations report found that human error was a factor in 68% of data breaches.
68%. That's a lot.
It is, and it shows that security awareness training is more important than ever.
So what are some of the common ways that humans contribute to these breaches?
Well, social engineering is a big one. That's where attackers manipulate people into giving up information or doing something that compromises security.
Give me an example.
The ransomware attack on MGM Resorts in 2023, the attacker tricked a help desk employee into resetting a password. No verification or anything.
And that gave them access to the whole system.
Pretty much. It shows how a simple mistake can have huge consequences.
So what about phishing attacks? Are those still a big problem?
Oh yeah, those are still huge. And they're getting more sophisticated all the time. Attackers are really good at impersonating legitimate organizations.
So you think you're clicking on a link from your bank or something, but it's actually a trap.
Exactly. And then there are weak passwords and accidental data leaks. Those are major contributors too.
So people using the same password for everything or writing their passwords down on sticky notes.
Yep. And then misconfiguring cloud storage settings or accidentally sharing confidential information. It all adds up.
So what can organizations do to address this human element? It seems like a tough problem to solve.
It is, but there are things they can do. Security awareness training is key. Make sure employees are aware of the latest threats and how to avoid them.
So not just a one-time training session, but ongoing education.
Right. Keep it fresh, keep it engaging. Simulations can be really effective, like phishing tests and virtual escape rooms.
Okay, that sounds interesting. What about technology? Can technology help mitigate human error?
Absolutely. Effective identity management is crucial. You need strong access control, especially for privileged accounts.
So limit the number of people who have admin access, that kind of thing.
Right. And consider implementing a zero trust model.
Zero trust. What's that?
It's about assuming that every request could be malicious, verifying every access attempt.
So never trust, always verify.
Exactly. And things like single sign-on and multi-factor authentication can help too.
MFA is a pain sometimes, but I guess it's worth it for the added security.
Definitely. And don't forget about strong password policies and account lockouts.
Okay, so we've talked about training and technology. Anything else?
Incident response planning. You need to be prepared for when, not if, an attack occurs.
So it's not just about preventing attacks, it's about minimizing the damage when they do happen.
Exactly. Gartner has a report that talks about this. Maverick research. You will be hacked, so embrace the breach.
Wow, that's a pretty blunt title.
It is. But it's the reality. You have to accept that breaches are inevitable and focus on building resilience.
So data backups, recovery procedures, that kind of thing.
Right. You need to have a plan in place. Don't wait until it's too late.
Okay, so we need to split our cybersecurity budget between preparedness, prevention, and incident response.
That's the idea. Cover all your bases.
Makes sense.
And at the end of the day, it's about creating a culture of security where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility for protecting the organization.
A team effort, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how we'll make a difference in this fight.
It's a lot to think about, for sure. But awareness is definitely the first step. Okay, so what else is happening out there in the wild world of cybersecurity?
Well, the Zero Day Initiative, ZDI, just reported on some vulnerabilities in Mazda cars.
Mazda cars. Wait, like the ones people drive?
Yeah, specifically the infotainment systems in several models.
So like the navigation system, the radio, all that.
Exactly. It seems like cybersecurity is touching everything these days.
So what kind of vulnerabilities are we talking about here? How serious is it?
They're saying an attacker could potentially execute arbitrary code with root privileges.
Root privileges, that sounds bad.
It's not good. The problem is with how the system handles user input. It doesn't sanitize it properly.
Okay, and what does that mean in practical terms?
It means someone could exploit these vulnerabilities by connecting a USB device to the system, like a specially crafted USB drive.
So they plug it in, and then what? They take control of the car.
Not the whole car, no, but potentially the infotainment system.
So they could access data, mess with settings. What else?
Maybe even disrupt critical functions. It depends on how the system is designed and how exploitable these vulnerabilities are.
This is kind of scary. I mean, our cars are becoming more and more connected, more reliant on software.
Right, and as that happens, security becomes even more crucial.
Has Mazda done anything about this?
ZDI disclosed the vulnerabilities responsibly, but so far there are no patches available.
So what can Mazda owners do to protect themselves?
The best advice for now is to be careful about what USB devices you connect to your car. If you don't know where it came from, don't plug it in.
Good advice. Okay, so we've got cars being hacked. What else is new?
Well, Malwarebytes, the cybersecurity company, just acquired Azure VPN.
A VPN company. Interesting. Why would they do that?
Privacy is becoming a huge concern. More and more people are looking for ways to protect their data online.
Right. VPNs are supposed to help with that, encrypting your traffic and masking your IP address.
Exactly. And Azure VPN is known for its strong privacy features. They have this blind operator tool that disables access to their servers.
So no one can snoop on your traffic, not even Azure VPN themselves.
That's the idea. It's a big selling point for privacy-conscious users.
Yeah, and Malwarebytes is going to keep those features.
They've said they will. They're committed to maintaining Azure VPN's privacy standards.
Okay, that's good to hear. So what does this mean for Malwarebytes users?
They're planning to integrate Azure VPN's technology into their product offerings. So you might see some new privacy-focused features in their software.
Makes sense. They're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Now, HackerOne just released their annual report, and there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence or AI.
AI, that's a hot topic these days.
Yeah.
How is it impacting cybersecurity?
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
Oh.
On one hand, it's being integrated into a lot of security tools and processes, which is good in theory, but it also creates new challenges.
Like,
Well, for one thing, you need skilled professionals who understand AI to effectively test and evaluate these new technologies.
right, so it's creating a demand for specialized security researchers.
Exactly. But There are also concerns about the potential risks of AI, especially generative AI.
Generative AI, isn't that what they use to create deepfakes?
Among other things, yes. It can generate very convincing fake content, and that's a problem for cybersecurity.
Yeah, because it could be used for phishing attacks, disinformation
All
campaigns.
sorts of malicious purposes. It's a real concern.
So AI is a tool that can be used for good or evil, basically.
That's the bottom line. And it's up to us, the cybersecurity community, to make sure it's used responsibly.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything today. From car hacking to ransomware attacks, from nation-state espionage to the rise of AI, it's been a lot to take in.
It has. And it shows how complex and constantly evolving the cybersecurity landscape is.
But the good news is, we're not standing still. The cybersecurity community is fighting back, developing new technologies, sharing information, and working together to make the digital world a safer place.
And remember, CybersecurityHQ is a great resource for anyone who wants to stay informed and up to date on the latest threats and trends.
That's right. They have news, reports, a job board, and a newsletter that reaches over 70,000 people every week. So check them out if you haven't already.
Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe out there.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.